Drones are not only become a major tool in the CIA's counterterrorism efforts, but a primary source of public debate. As the controversy rises, human rights advocates rallied in front of the White House, demanding an end to their use. Alexia Campbell has more.
I say drones out, you say no! Drones out! Drones out!
Hundreds of people rallied outside the White House this weekend to protest the CIA's targeted drone strikes in North Africa and the Middle East. They say the unmanned planes are killing too many innocent children and civilians. On top of that, they say the missile strikes kill suspected terrorists without giving them a fair trial.
And people from across the East Coast and even the Midwest came into D.C. today to make sure that the world knows that we don't stand with this government murder and surveillance and chipping away our rights.
The CIA focuses on targets in Pakistan and Afghanistan, but is expanding strikes against al-Qaeda in Yemen. CIA Director John Brennan said during his confirmation hearings that the agency only uses drone warfare as a last resort.
I think they really have a misunderstanding of what we do as a government and the care that we take and the agony that we go through to make sure that we do not have any collateral injuries or deaths.
Foreign policy experts estimate that U.S. drones have killed between 3,000 and 5,000 people. During Saturday's rally, protesters covered cardboard boxes and Arab flags to represent drone victims. They were preparing to deliver them to the nearby offices of a contractor that makes drones for the CIA.
Drones kill innocent people. If you want to fight terrorism, we need to find a smart way to do that. Because lagging bomb, dropping bomb everywhere, it kills people. And it puts people in fear. They are terrorized.
Members of the Answer Coalition, which organized the rally, marched with other human rights advocates to the offices of General Atomics on Pennsylvania Avenue. Protesters piled up the boxes outside as people inside the building watched from behind locked glass doors. For District Wire News, I'm Alexia Campbell.
Murders in Mexico have fallen since President Enrique Peña Nieto came to power in December of 2012. When comparing the period of December through April of last year to this year, drug-related killings have fallen 14%. Nieto says fighting crime is one of his main priorities. 90,000 people have been killed in drug-related violence over the past 6 years.
Brazil is in a state of emergency in response to the country's growing number of immigrants. Officials say most of the immigrants are from Haiti, but others come from Bangladesh and Nigeria. The majority of immigrants are coming into the western region of Acre in search of work. The country has an economic boom leading up to the 2014 World Cup and 2016 Olympics.
Students in Chile are standing up for education reform, even if it turns violent. Last Thursday, tens of thousands of students, teachers, and their supporters marched for free education. Violence broke out, and police arrested more than 100 people. Some were uninjured. Some were injured. Protesters wanted education for all, not just the rich. Local media called it one of the biggest marches in Santiago in 2 decades.
Change is coming to Venezuela. After the death of socialist President Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, Chavez's hand-picked successor, ran against the former governor and mayor Enrique Capriles in the presidential election. Alexia Campbell is live in studio to talk with us about Venezuela's future. Alexia?
Thanks, Kenya. I'm here with Rick Rockwell. He's an associate professor at American University School of Communication, as well as the executive producer and host of the weekly podcast, Latin Pulse. Professor Rockwell, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So it was a really narrow win, the election for the socialist candidate Nicolás Maduro, and the opposition has accused them of rigging the elections. How can we know for sure, or is there any truth to that at all?
Well, I don't think we know at this point, and I think that we have to be cautious about where we're going with those sorts of accusations. It is unusual that pre-polls before the election said that Maduro would win by 8, 10, 11 points, maybe more. And to win by barely a percentage point was a surprise. The fact that Governor Capriles, who is the governor of Miranda State, in his speech on election night said there are 3,200 different violations of the ruling party to the election law. Those have to be looked at. The Organization of American States, the OAS, has volunteered to come in and help the Venezuelans count votes. And Maduro has said he is open to the idea of a recount. So we'll see if there's going to be a recount. We'll see if there's going to be an investigation.
Right. So right now there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And also the late President Hugo Chavez was a very outspoken critic of the United States. What does this new election mean to the future of U.S.-Venezuela relations?
Again, we have to be cautious about this. We don't know. There was a lot of rhetoric last night in the speeches coming out of Caracas, rhetoric that some people in the United States would say it's the same song that Chavez sung. But there are news reports today that Maduro turned to Bill Richardson, who was there as an international observer, someone who has reached out to the Cuban government, to other governments in Latin America and around the world as more or less an unofficial ambassador. And he said to Richardson, we need to fix things between Washington and Caracas. And so there is maybe an olive branch that's out there. We'll have to see, because relations have been rockier, some would say, after Chavez's death.
Wow, and then, so following that, so what sort of legacy does Chavez leave behind? I mean, not just in Venezuela, but in the region.
Well, I think a mixed legacy. You cannot go without noting that Chavez delivered on one of his promises to make a more equitable society in Venezuela. Venezuela is the most equal society in Latin America as far as distribution of wealth. And so he was able to change that. He was able to affect poverty rates. But some people now wonder at what cost, because there are problems with infrastructure in Venezuela, which is an oil-rich country, but is yet having electrical lapses, food shortages, and other problems. And so some people wonder about the economic legacy of Hugo Chavez. But as a leader for the left and for independence in Latin America, people are going to be searching for a long time for someone to replace him.
Do you think that Nicolás Maduro has that ability to capture the hearts of the ordinary Venezuelans?
So far, I think the election results would tell us no. Someone who started with a very large lead, with a sympathy vote for Hugo Chavez, these election results tell us no. And actually, if the opposition is right and that they actually won, then there's something more to what may be the very weak beginning of a Maduro administration.
All right, well, we'll be watching what happens next. Thank you for joining us. Kenya, back to you.
Thank you, Alexia.
Investigators in Bali are retrieving the wreckage of a 737 that crashed Saturday. Passengers reported that a freak storm enveloped the plane just before they crashed into the ocean. No one was killed in the crash, but many of the 108 passengers were injured. Investigators have recovered the black box and are hoping to find out why the plane crashed.
Bulgaria's only nuclear power plant is still closed after an emergency shutdown. A turbo generator had a hydrogen leak in its cooling system earlier this morning. The system that was shut down is non-nuclear, and there are no detectable changes in radioactivity around the plant. Officials recently cut energy production at the plant for safety reasons. No statement has been released about future plans for repairs or an expected reopening.
Coming up after the break, Georgetown University Hindu students celebrate spring with the holiday Holi.
And students celebrate the anniversary of Elysee, the Elysee Treaty, with a debate challenge. Stay with us.